What inspired y'all to start the podcast?
Oh, that's a good question.
We supposed to be asking questions.
Listen, I'm usually on the other side of stuff like this, so I always got a ton of questions.
Well, I say the pandemic was part of it.
Okay.
So I mean, we already, Saku and I, behind the scenes, or just like regular lives, already kind of have some of these kind of conversations.
Okay.
And so like we knew that we wanted to start having more of them eventually. But to be honest, the fact that we started having it this soon is like mostly because of the pandemic. Because we're mostly doing events.
Ooh, fun. Okay.
When we started, like Afro brunches.
Ooh, okay. Well, I hope the world opens up again, because I definitely would want to go to one of those.
Oh yeah. Definitely gotta come to one of the Afro brunches.
Oh, I'm here for it. Listen, anywhere there, hopefully there's food, there's Afro beats. I'm good. I'm in a good place.
I say the pandemic in a lot of ways kind of like nudged us into. You say that second, like this conversation.
Yeah. It's just all about like adapting, right?
Yeah.
And then we just take it to this platform. But the key thing is like the platforms are the same, but it's just different, right? With the brunch, we were trying to bring people together.
Yeah.
Interact, get to like build networks, right?
Okay.
And then with Fatou Talk, it's the same thing, right? It's a platform where we're trying to generate this sort of connections.
I love it.
But the difference within it is just like experience and skills that takeaways.
Yeah, like the overall mission is to create a culture of African excellence.
Yes.
So, regardless of what we're doing, that's what's ultimately the expectation, right?
I love that. It's important. There's so many, I think, like young Africans and people of the diaspora just doing such great things. Yeah. And it's always like, I always get really excited because I'm just like, we've been doing these things for so long. And it's like, to see that emergence, now is just like, we've been there. But it's cool to see like things like this come, into fruition. So I'm all for it. I'm excited. I'm honored to be here.
That's the one. We're happy to have you.
We are.
So, welcome to Fatou Talk. We got a special guest today from Guinea, West Africa.
Yes, La Guinea.
We're raised in New York.
Yeah.
Raised in New York, and she's consider yourself a multi-hyphenate.
Yeah. Someone who does too much, yes. Who does the most.
Community builder.
Yeah.
Serial entrepreneur. Cultural strategist.
Yes.
all the things.
All the things.
It's like she's multi-dimensional.
Listen, that's the only way to be.
She's the founder of AB
Media Group.
Which helps build products.
Yeah, content, products, and platforms for brands that are really just like looking to make a difference. And that can be anything, right? So like we have different mediums. We work with organizations. We work with we've worked with beauty brands. We've worked with like event and lifestyle brands. So the cool thing is that we get to work in a lot of different industries, but the core thing that we really like look for are businesses and brands that are like looking to create something that's unique or put something out there that's really like one of a kind.
And that's one of the many things that she does.
Yeah.
We've done our research.
I love it. It makes me excited because most of the time people will be like, so yeah, I'm going to let you tell us about yourself. But yeah.
So she's also the founder of PR Girl Manifesto.
Yes.
Which is a digital community of 40,000 people.
Yeah.
Catered to women communications.
Yep.
She's also a co-founder of
Too much.
Net Worth.
Yeah.
Philly Startup Week.
Wow, y'all really did y'all research. Y'all did y'all research.
But like honestly, like shout out to all the African Black women out there who are doing
yes.
the most.
Yes.
In the right way. Make me feel like what am I doing? You guys are taking this to a whole new level.
Yeah, we got to.
So, she's co-founder of different network organizations.
Yeah.
So, we're happy to talk to her today about, her journey and also provide value for everyone who's on. So, welcome Fatou, Barry.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I feel like this is going to be a great conversation. So.
Get comfortable.
Yes, I'm ready.
this is an opportunity for you to be yourself.
Of
I
course.
am personally honored to have you on the show. Because usually, we trying to really have multiple voices on this. So you are the first person from Guinea. And you know that I'm from Guinea, so shout out to Guinea.
Shout out to La Guinée.
Vive la Guinea. So
Vive la Guinée.
We really are excited about your perspective and personal journey to how you get to where you are today.
Yeah.
So just to kick us off,
Before we even start, we like you to try the pepper soup.
Ooh, yes. I love it. And I hope. Let's see. Yes. Yes. I like spicy food, so I don't know if y'all were expecting like a. Nah, this is delicious. Who made it? Yeah. Really?
You gotta give credit to Aki.
So, this is my first time. I gotta be honest.
No, it's good.
Come on.
No, it's really good. I really like it. Yeah.
I said it's my first time.
No,
it's good. Nah, it's good. I love spicy food. So
first, for someone who made this the first time, honestly, bro, it's incredible.
No, it's dumb good. Yeah.
Cool.
Look at you chefing it up.
A little bit. So who's probably gonna come with a peanut soup?
Ooh, mafitiga.
Yes. I might have to get some tips from you, but I do have to make a dish from Guinea. That's on one of our to-do lists.
I love it.
So if you want to give your introduction.
Yeah.
So you touched upon some of what you do, but.
Yeah, would be happy to. So yeah, Fatou, y'all know my name by now. I'm from New York, so I'm actually a Philly transplant. And really just I guess everything that I do in my entire life has just been a result of going after the things that make sense, and the things that I feel like we're lacking. So grew up in New York, born in Guinea, but raised here. So I've always had these two really interesting identities of everyone at home still speaks Fula, still speaks French. My mom worked for the Guinea mission, so still very connected to where I'm from. But then also I'm here. I'm in New York City. I'm in America. So having that identity, and those two kind of juxtaposing against each other. But what I found is that it really gave me an interesting view of the world, because it's I think you can't help but have that viewpoint when you are seeing things that are still going on back home, and you're still connected to the place that you come from, but you're in this new place where there's just so much for you to explore and so much for you to discover. So I've always had that unique lens of just going through life and being all right, where is the middle ground for me? How do I live, I guess, as a Guinean-American, without forgetting where I come from, and with still really honoring my roots. So, that guided me through, most of my life till I'm here.
How old were you when you came to the States?
I was 4. So I was 4 years old when we came here, but we used to go back every 2 years. So this has probably been the longest time that I haven't been back in Guinea. And my mom actually lives between Guinea and Morocco. So I have to go back soon to see her, but I still have a lot of family there, which is amazing. I love that.
What part of New York?
Manhattan.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've lived in every single borough in New York City, but I grew up in Manhattan. Yeah.
Rich background.
Not even. Oh, no, please ask all the questions.
There's a lot to untack.
Ask all the questions.
Yeah, but we also want to touch on the work that you do.
Yeah.
So share with us about what do you do, and what your company is about, and we just sort of take it from there.
Yeah. So the primary company that I think most people know me for is AB Media Group, and that is a creative agency. Again, we build content, platforms, products that we believe are authentic and are changing the world. So that could look anywhere from organizing a conference, which we've done, to building websites, right? To building out brand identities, to helping with brand strategy to marketing rollout, the photography, videography, like there's like just everything that we do. And I think it's a result of me being somebody who enjoys so many things. I've never been somebody that like you could put into a box or felt like they wanted to be like, hey, this, Fatou does this. No, it's always like, well, I'm not really sure what Fatou does because last week I saw her doing this and this week I'm watching her do this. And so the agency is a manifestation of that, but it's also a reimagining for me of like what role agencies, creatives, freelancers, like big picture thinkers have in the world, right? So I think most of the time when you look at an agency, you're like, hey, we provide services, we provide like these are the things that we do. But for me, it's like, all right, well, this thing doesn't exist in a silo. For an agency to like function, you need people to work for it. Most of the time, those people are creatives, are designers, are marketers, are photographers. How can we support the larger community? Also, whereas like the projects that we like to be involved in, like we don't just like to do things. So we are very specific about who we work with and how we work with them and how we run the agency. So a percentage of all of our project profits go back into like creative grants that we give out to local businesses, local creative strategists, designers, because sometimes it's like you just need a little bit of capital to get started to do what you want to do. And it's not always some crazy big number. It's just like, if you could get 500 to LLC your business, that's one step further, So we like to think of like the micro grants in that regard, but then there's also this this cultural component of the work that we do, where
you guys offer micro grants.
Yeah, so we do. Yeah, so we offer grants. You can actually apply for it on our website, and we do them on a rolling basis. So as funds permit, as we stack up some projects, we're like, all right, we're going to give apply. We're going to give money to X amount of people who have applied for this grant. We also have a store that works as like a fundraising initiative. So all of the items in our store help an initiative or help a project or help an organization. Put a Black woman in charge, the shirt, the merchandise that we just dropped, 10% of those sales go to Transparent and Black, an organization that's helping to provide healing spaces for Black people. Our International Day of the Girl shirts, all the proceeds from that go to Nia Africa, which is a not-for-profit that's helping to sponsor secondary schooling for girls in Africa. So there's always a cause tied to a lot of what we do, even again with the percentage of each of the client projects that we do going back into the micro grant. So AB Media Group is really kind of like my way of merging, wanting to do the things that I know that I'm great at, the things that I know that the community is great at, with helping, the community around me and the larger world around me. So there's the agency component. I'm also the founder of PR Girl Manifesto, which...
Let's stay on AB.
Okay, I love it.
For a little bit, so we can really take it in.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say, once someone or a company comes to you guys,
yeah.
What does that typically look like? Does it depend on who's coming?
Mm-hmm.
You'll help them out in the particular way that they need, or
yeah.
is there a particular framework that you guys tend to use?
Yeah, so I'm big on systems and processes. I feel like they could always be better, but I'm big on there's a function for everything. So if someone's interested in working with us, so we generally actually put up quite a bit of information on our site so that you can kind of forecast if you'll be a good fit or not, depending on the previous work that we've done, the previous clients that we've worked with. But what we do is we have a project inquiry form. Yeah. And once you fill that out, it allows us to kind of get a base level idea of what you might be looking for. And we ask questions like, how new is your business? How long have you been in business? Do you already have an existing website or a presence? What exactly would you be looking, for from us? So we ask those questions, and that's kind of a way for us to be able to determine internally if the person might be a good fit. And then we always have a discovery call, right? So we really like to get to know the people that we work with. A lot of our clients we don't really look at them as clients. We look at them as family, which I think has helped because we have so many long-term clients, right? People that we've been working with for more than a year, more than 6 months. And that's because we really like to establish a working relationship where it feels like a collaboration. So like we're helping you get to where you want to be. You know, it's not just like, hey, I'm coming to you, I want a logo, like, can I get a logo? No, like we're gonna ask you questions about like, all right, well, why do you want a logo? Why are you looking at a logo versus building a brand? Have you thought about your brand foundation? Have you thought about your values? Have you thought about like who you're marketing to? Who's your target demo? So we really like to kind of like also give the people that we work with the tools to really think like big picture about their brands and businesses. So after we have that second discovery call, we then come out with a proposal, like based on what you told us and what we talked about and what you said your needs were. This is what we believe a working relationship looks like for us. And people can make amendments to it, be like, all right, well, I'd also like to explore this, or maybe let's hold off on that. So it really is a collaborative process. It's never just like a hey, what, those situations like, what's your rates? And it's like, well, this, no, it's like, it's really like a thought out, really bespoke process. So.
Something I've always liked about Philly versus some other cities is the way you build relationships.
Yeah.
I feel tends to be a lot more like, at least when you're working companies to companies, person to person, tends to be very relationship building versus transaction.
It definitely is. That's one of the things that attracted me to Philly. I'm from New York, and so I'm like familiar with the New York entrepreneurial scene, was in there. And Philly just felt different in many ways. It felt big, but not big enough to the point where everybody was just like in it, for the clout game, where am I friends with this person? Oh yeah, these group of entrepreneurs are together, or we're only working it together because we know, like, boost our profile. I think here things feel a little bit more intentional, which I really enjoy because I am an intentional person. And there's just so many like interesting relationships to what you said. People tend to network across. And I really like that. And I think it's why so many things that happen in Philly, like ventures and initiatives, I think it's why it works, because it's very community focused.
So for me, what I'm curious for you, I want you to elaborate a little bit about this idea of your perception of you, of your client as a family.
Yeah.
So can you sort of talk a little bit about that? And the reason why I'm asking this, because based on a few people that we have had in the show, we noticed a trend about the importance of relationship. And how relationship could be a vital aspect of your success. Is your view of like relationship as a major component of your business? Is there a cultural connection to that, or do you think that just from a business perspective, relationship is just a key thing to know?
I think it's a bit of both. So one thing about me that I know is that the way that I think and the things that I do are always centered in community, because I grew up in a culture that valued community. I think most Africans I think most Africans, Caribbean, like most people outside of the U.S. will probably feel the same way. We grow up in very community-centered, community-focused environments where, like your friend, that you grew up with is like your brother or your sister. Your cousins are your brothers and your sisters. Like, we're very like family first. My experience is that growing up, I understood the value of like the unit versus like, I'm going to do this for myself. It's just about me. And I think it's important because it's like, how do you really sustain if you're only always thinking about yourself, And some people do. Some people like, get to great heights and are like, just have been about themselves. But I think the most sustainable businesses, sustainable relationships have to be centered in, not only what people can do for you, but what you can do for other people and how you can do things together. So I definitely would say that actually community is one of the values of our agency. So the three things that we focus on: creativity, community, and culture. And the community component, I think is just so important, because when I'm building these relationships with clients, the reason that they feel like family is because I'm invested in them as if they were family. I think you go a lot farther when you're not looking at somebody, to what you said, like as a transaction, and you're looking at someone as like, well, how can we invest in each other? How is the work that we're doing here together, going to help propel both of us? So yeah, I definitely would say it plays a big role in how I run a business and how I choose to like engage in anything.
Something I noticed, and I'm looking at your style here.
Yeah.
By the way, your glasses.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
I'm also looking at the font on your.
Yeah.
I've noticed a certain style that they use a lot of your through social media.
Yeah.
Like the fonts and like the designs. Like what's inspired your design?
So, I mean, this question I think can go anywhere. It could go this way. No, I think for me, I'm just really, at least in design, I have found that like I'm inspired by the things that I experience, by the things that are around me. People will quickly realize that red and black are some of my favorite colors. I mean, I'm from New York. I feel like black is a staple color for anyone that's like, that's all we know, like wear black. But specifically for me, for like red, when you look at the like color theory, red is a powerful color, right? I'm also a Scorpio, so it's one of my colors. But it's
we just left Scorpio season.
I know we just left Scorpio. Thank you. We're in Sagittarius season now, yeah. But yes, I think for me, like just visually, one, I'm inspired by the things that I experience, by the things that are around me. But I'm also very intentional about like the colors that I find myself gravitating to. Red, like I said, is a powerful color, and for me, that's important. I feel like I was raised by a single mom. I grew up in a house of all women, like so. Having power, being a powerful woman, and really being able to like reclaim that. Specifically, if we're gonna get honest about it, and coming from a culture that doesn't always necessarily push, girls and women to be at the forefront, it's really important for me to tap into those things. I like things that are bold. The mute thing isn't really for me. I've realized I've tried to do it, like the warm browns and like, oh yes, I'm so boho, but no, it's not really me. I'm very like hey, black, red, white, in your face, like so. Yes, I'd say design wise, that's kind of like what influences me. I like things that are different. So like I'm a design geek where I'm always looking up like new fonts. I'm like, oh, this font is cool, or this is like abstract. This is cool. Let me play around with texture. So yeah, I'd say that design-wise, I'm just inspired by the things that are around me, and I let that ebb and flow into the work.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You got anything?
No, I just love hearing like everything that you do is so driven by your personal experience. And this is a platform again where we really try to give a voice to the African diaspora.
Yeah.
So, given your experience, and you mentioned something about like you growing up with a single mother.
Yeah.
And when you actually look at the standard African sort of like family, it's like you need to have both.
Yeah.
So for some people, like for many Africans, it makes you seem like an outsider.
It definitely does.
So tell us, just walk us through that. Like, what does that feel? What I love about this is that how you were able to use your experience being different, and using that to like empower yourself and other women.
Yeah.
Like, how do you make that switch?
So here's what I will say. I think because I grew up in a single parent household, and that's not to say that I didn't have like father figures in my life. I have uncles. I have my mom's friends that like I think stepped into that role when they could. But for me, like having my mom as my nuclear, and then having like my sisters too, all I've known is like powerful women. All I've known is women that take life by the reins. Like I watched my mom hustle, even though she worked for the UN. Like I've never, if we were ever without, and I'm pretty sure that there were times when she struggled, but she never let us see that. Like I wouldn't be able to tell you if we ever struggled, even though I know for a fact that we did, because my mom always made sure that we had what we needed. And I think when you grow up in a situation like that, and I think when you are raised by someone like that, it's very hard not to champion for women. It's very hard not to want women to be seen as powerful, and want women to know that, like, you know, whatever they want to do is available to them. Like everything that I'm doing now is a direct byproduct of the people that raised me. That's my mom, my sisters. Like my big sister was the first activist that I knew. She was at protests, at rallies. She was protesting Thanksgiving like when she was 15, and so like she's like 32 now. So think about, like, that's like a whole like 10 to 15 like years. So, you know, she really showed me what it meant to speak up. She works in public health, and that's rooted in the fact that, like, she has a strong desire to help people who are, you know, I think, you know, just underserved. And that's also where I learned, like, the idea of, like, you know, fair trade was something I learned because of my sister. The idea that the things that we wear, what we, like, choose to purchase, there's like a cause and effect to that there are people who make your clothes, there are children who make your clothes, so you have to be conscious of what you buy and who you buy from. Like, all those things are a result of the woman that raised me. My other sister, you know, like, really working hard and hustling. My sister used to, like, my oldest sister used to make dinner for all of us, you know? My mom would, like, and, you know, in, like, an African household, it's, like, usually your mother's the one that's at the top, but, like, we as women sometimes are groomed to be like caretakers in most instances. And so my sister would like go to school. It's not like she didn't have school like that. She would go to school, would come home. She was the one that would cook dinner. And so like all these things of like perseverance, of hustling, of like really like, you know, of pushing myself, all those things I learned from being raised by women. So it's hard for me not to champion for women. It's hard for me to not like sit there and be like, well, there's a range of possibilities of what anyone could do. And then I think, too, hearing the experiences of my mom and my aunts and, like, my cousins, like, it's hard for me not to do the most that I can do because I don't take any of it for granted. It is just a matter of circumstance. If I'm, you know, being 200% honest, it's by chance that I got to live the life that I get to live. When I know that there are women and girls who do not have agency over their lives, who do not have the ability to make choices. So I'm really intentional about everything, even down to like the partner, the person that I choose to like, you know, call my boyfriend, my partner. It is wild for a traditional Fulani girl to be dating and have someone that is not Fula as her partner, you know? And so it's something that people are like, oh, like, you know, in the family, some people are like, what are you doing? Are you going to get married? You know? But all that is intentional because I think that, you know, women, specifically African women, need to know that they have agency, that they have choices, and that they are allowed, you can live the life that you want to live without turning your back on your culture, you know? So, like, all of those things, I think of the single mother, the single parent household, being raised by a woman, being in a house full of other women, and then just the values that I learned from those women, definitely, yeah, have influenced every single facet of
Keith, I could do a follow-up question here too. Just based on what you have shared with us, you know, women leadership has always been there.
Yeah.
But now we're starting to see more of it now in sort of like on TV in everyday life.
Yeah.
So for someone like you, we just had the first vice president. You know, Kamala Harris.
Yes.
The first black woman vice president. For you, personally, what does that mean for you?
Man, I think it's such a I think a long overdue moment because to what you said, like women in leadership positions, specifically the work done by black women, it's not a new thing.
Right.
Black women have been at the forefront of every single major movement in history. Yet there's erasure that happens, right, of their role in these things. The women's suffrage movement, black women, the ability for black people to even be able to vote, black women. You know, so it's like we've been there. Black women have been there. So to see that our first, you know, female vice president is black is so monumental because it's like it's almost like a small validation to like everything that our ancestors, like, as black women have done, right? To now have a woman in a seat of power, in a position of power that's front facing, it's like it can only go up from here. So it's like now when you tell like little black girls, yeah, you can be president, you know, like we always say like, yeah, you can be anything that you want to be, but like there's an actual real like life application to it now of like, hey, like there is a black woman in the White House. There's a black woman that's a vice president, you know? And when we really think about the roles of like, you know, presidents, like vice presidents, like, and I wholeheartedly believe it. Like they're grooming Kamala Harris to be president, you know? Because you think about it, Joe Biden is a one-term president. Like he's a one-term president. So like there's just so many, I think, different implications and not even implications. There's just so many like possibilities to having her as vice president, to having a black woman in this position, and not only her. Like, look at freaking Stacey Abrams, who lost, and was still the reason why. Was the reason why freaking Georgia voted. You know, like we have black women. It's not only her; it's an entire team of black and women of color. So I think it's just so validating that, you know, to get to get acknowledgement and to be in this time, because the work has always been done. Black women have been doing the work, and now, you know, it's been long overdue, but people are starting to see, wow, like this does not move without black women. And that's my thing, put a black woman in charge and see what happens. Like it's
Just know me. I tell you what, black men, we gotta step it up.
I think you can't understate the fact, you know, even just the optics of Kamala Harris being vice president. Because, you know, when Barack Obama was president, it's the fact that a black man was in that office. It's easy to understate how powerful that picture was.
Yeah.
So we're seeing that with Kamala too now. Yep.
Yeah, and also not even just that. I think so. There's like rate like levels here, right? So not just a black woman in, you know, in as vice president, but also she's also South Asian, right? So like also a mixed woman, two cultures. They, you know, typically like you would not see. So she's of these two different backgrounds. She's also like a stepmom. She also does not have children. So you think about like women who have occupied these roles before, and like there's always kind of been some type of standard, but like now it's just like, yo, she's hitting all of these benchmarks that are really reflective of what women in like this in this lifetime, you know, look like, how they live like. So there are layers to it, which I think is why there's something to be said about how much people can take away from her being in this position. And, you know, not only as a black woman, but this means something to South Asian women. This means something to like women. Like how old was she when she married? She was older when she married her husband. So like women who get married late, women who choose not to have, like there's a lot that I think she represents. I mean, it's great as a black woman, as, you know, an African woman. I'm always going to identify with, you know, her being a black woman in this position, but it also means a lot to other people.
Right.
Yeah.
Going back to AB Media, right? So you talked about what you guys do, and kind of clients you work with. How long have you guys been in operation?
What was it, February? I think we're about to be like 2.5 years. And the reason why it's so muddy is because I've been a business owner for a while now. So I'm just like, wait, when did this start versus like, was it just a continuation? But yeah, almost, I think about 2.5 years. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about what it was like starting it?
Yeah.
Building this, you know, powerful
That's
organization.
right?
Man, let me tell you, it stopped and started, stopped and started so many times. And I think that's why I appreciate so much, because the journey hasn't been linear. It's been very much non-linear, because I knew that I wanted an agency that did certain things, but who I am has changed, right, since I started the agency. We all change every single year. The things that I deem valuable, the things that I want to put out into the world have changed. So the journey has been really interesting. I think in many ways it's sparked like a coming back to myself, right? Like a Sankofa moment of sorts, but for the agency. Because the driving, like the North Light for anything that I do is to be of service to the community, to be of service to people. It's always been the thing that has been like my thing. I want to help people. How do you help people, right? Traditionally, people think, okay, well, doctors help people. I'm going to do that. Lawyers help people. I'm going to do that. But for me, it was like, how can I use my skill set, right? How can I use the things that I know that I'm good at to help people? So this coming back to myself that has happened so far has happened in the last year. So when we first started the agency, I think it was just it was very surface level. We knew that there was the community component to it, but we didn't know how far that community component would go. We just knew that we liked to create stuff, and this time it was specifically in the digital space. We like to create stuff. We like to tinker around like with social. My background, just to give insight, before I did anything on my own, like freelance, or even decided to be in business for myself, is in PR and marketing. So when I was in college, I was a social media strategist for Marc Ecko Cotton Sew, which is like a branch of the Marc Ecko brand. And then I also did a lot of work for Rockaware, BBC, and Artful Dodger, through the company that I was working with at the time. So I was like, a 19-year-old in college, like, well, the internet is fun. I used to have a menswear blog.
not to cut you off.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I know that Fatou's been killing it for a long time. When we actually put out the flyer for the Suit Talk, my cousin actually hit me up. Was like, I think I went to college with her.
What is your cousin?
Her name is we call her Z.
Okay.
Her name is Zainab Sada.
This sounds so familiar. Yes.
Went to Buff State.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. She's like, oh yeah. She's like, this is gonna be a really good Suit Talk. I was definitely the person in college that was just like, yeah, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. That's awesome. And it's always cool to have full circle moments like that. Because what I will say is, like, Buffalo definitely contributed a lot to the way that I do things, right? Mm-hmm. Being in a city that does not have much outside of its colleges, when you want opportunity, you have to create your own opportunity. So my first baby companies were in college, right? I had a company called Collegiate Crown. I had a company that was the Berry Co. So like all these things started in this time. So that's really cool. I love full circle moments like that. But yeah, so before deciding that I was going to do any type of business or embark in any type of entrepreneurism, that's what I was doing in college. Post-grad, had a gig because of that. So I graduated and like kind of had the ease of knowing where I was going to end up. And I learned so much from this wonderful woman, Alicia Smalls Worthington, right? So she helped build a lot of functions of Rockaware. She was in Jay-Z's like Circle of Trust. And so she was working at Iconics, who had the licensing to all of these just amazing brands. Like Badger Mishka was under there, Peanuts was under there, a bunch of just different brands. Specifically with me, I worked in digital interactive media with some of the menswear brands that I mentioned. So I always had those things that I knew that I was good at, those things that I excelled at. I worked in hospitality as well, so I used to do in-house marketing for a really big restaurant group in the city. Was the digital director of a denim brand. So like I've always been in these spaces. But the thing that I think was lacking was that just ability to be doing good while doing good work, right? And that's important for me. I think that a lot of the things that I choose to do them because they are of value to the larger ecosystem that I find myself in, and that's a really important value for me. So that's what was always lacking. So I think when we first were like, hey, we're going to start the agency, it was more so just like, all right, everything that we've done,
for other people, things that we've done that people don't even know that we've done because we've been in the background doing it. Like, it's time to do it for not only myself, but for things that actually I think have a rooted investment in, right? And that's why we're so, like, I guess, finicky about the people that we work with and how we work with them, because I always want to make sure that, it's impactful and it's intentional. So the journey has been interesting. Like, we kind of like went off grid for a good couple of months, and in that time I was just like, I'm just gonna ask myself, like, what are the things that you want to do? Like, what do you really like? How can this sustain? What does this need to look like so that you don't get bored with it in 2-3 years and you're like, I've plateaued, I've peaked, I've done whatever. So that coming back into myself and being like, well, what are the things that have been sustainable about myself, about my likes, about my values, and really being able to identify those things and then make that the core values, so the community, the creativity, and the culture. Like, those are the 3 things that are main values in my life. And so now I've just mirrored them to be values of the agency. So it's been an interesting road. I'm pretty sure if you ask me, like, in a year, I'm going to have a different iteration of what this looks like. But I think we're always going to be, like, centering those 3 things, and always going to be figuring out, like, how we can reimagine the work that we do in a way that just makes sense and is doing good. And I think that even if we just look at trends, right, of like how people are changing in terms of their values and in terms of how they think and what they do, we're seeing people lean into this idea of like stewardship, right? So now when you buy something, there's a reason why people are like talking about, I want to buy Black owned, I want to buy like small business, I want to buy immigrant owned. Those are all because like there's a certain level of investment that people are looking to make now. People want to buy things, they want to do things that like also have a good impact, right? And are also doing something that is significant versus like, hey, like, I'm just buying this to buy this. There's still people who definitely like their buying behaviors look like that, but I think that as we are seeing, I think our generation, we're like considered millennials, right? But as we're looking at the generation behind us, which is like Gen Z, who's coming up, like they're very like in tune with what's going on in the world. Like they're the same young kids who freaking trolled Trump, right? Who bought tickets to a Trump rally so that it was an empty rally. So like I think that as long as we keep those things in mind, and I think as long as we like honor those values as we continue to grow, I think we'll continue to find good work to do, good brands to work with. Yeah.
Right. Fatou, so one thing we also like to do, we like to engage our audience.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have questions or comment for Fatou, this incredible woman who's doing so many things. Honestly, you might be sitting there and you might think about something that you want to do. This is your opportunity to really make your comment or your questions so that you can walk away with something new. Because but we do want to make this very interactive. So please go ahead and ask your questions and comments. And so that we don't have to do all the talking.
I'm crying.
Yeah. And she also needs some time to indulge in the pepper soup talk.
Oh no, I'm going to alternate. I was like, let me take this moment.
Right. So, can I share this thing?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I can actually... Sorry, my...
Your phone's like, what's going on?
I was going to say...
You ask your question, I'll come back.
No, I was just going to comment and say something that really stands out to me. Just like when I hear you talk about what you do,
Mm-hmm.
and even just like looking at your online presence is, authenticity is huge. It seems like everything you do is very intentional, and you mentioned like the values of the company, are like an extension of your own personal values.
Mm-hmm.
So, when you talk about like, you want to make sure that whatever you're working on, like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, you can still continue to work on it and grow. I think that's a powerful lesson for a lot of just like upcoming or other entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
That like when you're, let's say, coming up with an idea or furthering an idea, make sure that you enjoy the process or you enjoy what you're doing.
It's so important. I think about the times that I probably enjoyed the process the least. And it's times when I feel like I wasn't being true. I wasn't honoring like the things that I enjoy the things that I wanted to do. Because another thing about entrepreneurism is like people are gonna tell you what type of entrepreneur you should be all the time. You should do this. This is what a business looks like. This is like, and so it's really easy to get caught up in that. It's harder to like stay the course and like look right in front of you instead of to the left and to the right of you. Than it is to like, well, maybe I should do this because this person, maybe, and that's a thing that I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. So I think you have to, and I hate saying you have to trust the process, but you have to trust the process, but you also have to trust yourself. And you have to trust that like what it is that you're creating and what you're building. Because again, people are going to tell you how you should do things. And one of my favorite actually like references, it's from Jimmy Irvin in that documentary that they did with him and Dr. Dre, about like how they, accumulated this partnership and all this like wealth. And he made the comparison of a racehorse, right? So when racehorses, they have blinders on, and that's so that they can only focus in what's in front of them. So they can't see the horse to the left of them, they can't see the horse to the right of them, because if they do that, they'll get distracted and they'll get out of their flow and their, when someone's like riding them. So I thought that was like so, it's a really easy concept and it's simple, but that was just so mind-blowing for me, because I'm like, I like very rarely, I think, I used to engage a lot more in like entrepreneurial circles, and I still do, but before I used to be like, oh yeah, let's bounce these ideas off of each other. Oh, what are you doing? Man, maybe I should implement that. But now it's really just more so the camaraderie, right? And the ability to like talk to somebody who might be experiencing the same things as you are, but like I like look ahead. Like I like really, really, really like tell myself every day, like focus on your own race, focus on what you're doing. This is great, but it might not be for you, and don't feel like you have to pursue it. Because it's like so many people have amazing ideas, and they have the key, right? They have it, but because they get distracted along the journey of like what this person is doing, what that person is doing, and feeling like they're comparing themselves to other people instead of comparing themselves to them. And that's something that I think has really changed the game for me, is that like I love community, I will engage with other entrepreneurs, but I very rarely, and it's funny because my friends will say, I don't ask for advice anymore. Like I don't ask people what they think I should do. I just do it, or I bookmark it. If I don't feel like I can do it at that time, I bookmark it to a point where I feel more like, comfortable or maybe more confident doing it, because it's just so easy to completely deviate away from what you wanted to do because you took everybody's piece of advice. You listened to what this person did. You listened or you followed someone's journey, not for, just to listen to it, but to almost like find the blueprint, right? But they're context clues to everyone's journey. Everyone's leaving stuff out of their journey. There's like a lot of like interesting conversations that are not had about how someone got where they did. And so all of those things really influenced me to kind of be like, all right, Fatou, like run your own race, focus on your own thing. Because then at least if like, shit hits the fan, it's because of me. It's not because I listened to like this friend who was just like, you need to do this. So many people, perfect example for me, I know so many people, a lot of my friends are like, I'm going to create, like they're course creators, right? And they're like making millions. And it's like, it's just not for me. It's not. I love that they do it, and I love that they're excelling at it, but I know that it's not for me. And so I listen to that intuition, and I'm just like, yeah, that's not how I'm going to get my million, but like, it's great. So little things like that, because think about if I took the time to sit here and create a course that I might not even really fully be invested in. Now I'm taking time away from the things that I am invested in, because I think that if I do this, it's going to yield the same result, or it's going to happen the same way for me. And it's not, because we all have individual journeys.
One other thing for you too is, you're someone who's very clearly a highly creative person, and I imagine like that also like manifested in different, brands that you have and things that you do.
Yeah. And
so I think one challenge that a lot of creative people have is being able to like put the blinders on sometimes, because there are a lot of different maybe avenues that you can express your creativity. Yeah. So imagine it's also like finding a balance between, being able to just kind of charge forward
Mm-hmm.
and versus take detours or like maybe even say like side projects
Mm-hmm.
or like paths.
Yeah.
So how do you find that balance?
Ooh.
Someone who's very creative
Yeah.
and but also like has all these brands that are well managed and
Yeah. No. So I probably have about like 80 ideas, and I've been tracking them that have never seen the light of day or that are like in the back of my head, and I'm like, I really want to do this. But I think for me, one of the things that's been like key to like having all of these creative ideas and wanting to do so many things is being able to identify what makes sense in this moment now, and versus like what even better yet, what makes sense in this moment now, and what can I wait to do because I'll be in a much better place to do it then. Because the thing is, a lot of my like people that I like do follow and like see where they've like ended up in their own entrepreneurial career trajectory, what they've done has always been a means to do something else, right? Look at Janelle Monáe. What did Janelle Monáe start doing when she was first? We were introduced to Janelle Monáe as a musician. She hasn't put out music in a while. She's an actress, and she's a damn good one. But you'll notice that like there were elements of her brand as a musician that made sense. Like she was always extravagant. She always had a story. She was intentional about like how people saw. People don't even realize that she wore the suit all the time because her parents were both like worked jobs that had uniforms. I think her dad was a janitor or something. So it was important for her to have like a uniform. But even in that, like that's storytelling. And what is she doing now? She's doing projects like she was in Moonlight. She was in Hidden Figures. Like she's an actress. And so it's Lady Gaga. What did Lady Gaga want to do? She wanted to be an actress too, but had the means to be in entertainment and use that to get where she needed to be so that she could then access the resources and the people that would help her to get where she wants to be. So I think it's really important to be able to like, when you have so many ideas as I do, like too, it's like I have to be able to determine what makes sense now and what will be easier to get to once I get to a place where I have more access, I have more resources. It doesn't mean that I can't build it. I can build it, I can flesh it out, I can daydream about it, and I can really like put, like pen to paper. It doesn't mean I have to do it in that moment. And I find that if you give yourself like, some people hate waiting because they're like, well, someone else will probably put it out and then they'll be my idea. But I kind of take a look at it as like, if someone else takes the idea, it wasn't mine, then it wasn't meant for me to do it. Because that's the other part of this too, right? Being an entrepreneur, you got to have some crazy, crazy faith in yourself and the things that you're building, because it's not easy. Like, it's not. And I know people are always like, oh yeah, it's the hustle, but it's not. Like, there's like a mental toll that it takes on you. If you're constantly like, oh, I want to do this, but I can't. I'm not where I need to be. So I think being able to like make the distinction and being able to have faith that your ideas will come into fruition, even if you don't act on them now, I think is really, really like probably key for people who enjoy a lot of things and want to do many things.
I got more on the list.
It's just so many gems, man. They drop
Get your attention.
So I just wanted to share this. I follow this page called Minority Resource Inc. And it basically just has these following facts. Over the last 10 years, minority-owned businesses account for over 50% of the 2 million new businesses created. Minority-owned businesses have created 4.7 million jobs. Annual sales totaling to almost 700 billion.
Yeah.
So when you hear this fact, like, how do you respond to it?
So it's so interesting to me because there's several things here, right? So I feel like, and I'm gonna say underrepresented groups, because I hate that, I don't know, the minority thing just seems like, how they talk about like your language is so important, so like enslaved versus slave, like things like that. I feel like people make, like people intentionally make us the minority. But so like I'll say underrepresented businesses, right? So that I'm assuming that's it's black-owned businesses, that's women-owned businesses, that's immigrant-owned businesses, right? Probably generate the most income that we have, like in like our economy, and we're consistently overlooked, right? So to me, it's just interesting because all those facts are great, but a lot of these groups are still deeply underserved. Black women start businesses at the fastest rate, but have the hardest time finding access to capital, right? And to sustain businesses. And it's so interesting when I hear these facts, because it's like, we're out here, like we're out here, whether it's a black-owned business, whether it's a woman-owned business, an immigrant-owned business, like they're out there, but it's just, it's hard to grapple with statistics like that, because I also know like more black businesses have had to shut their doors and had to shut their operations down because of a lack of like generating income in the last couple of months, because of things like COVID that continue to disproportionately affect black and brown and women and immigrant businesses, right? And also, it just also brings me to another, like, I think frustration point about the way that like we look at underrepresented / minority businesses. It's like, do you realize that it's like, we have to tell people to buy black, we have to tell people to buy women owned, we have to tell people to buy immigrant owned, but it's like we're very quick to give people who don't fit those descriptions like money, right? And so it's powerful to hear those numbers, but it also like really brings up red flags to like what we still are continuously dealing with as business owners that are also considered underrepresented or minority businesses, because like it's a struggle. It's a struggle to start a business as a black person, as an immigrant, as a woman. It is a struggle to sustain that, even in the last couple of months, and people were just throwing money at black businesses and not thinking about the long-term effects, sustainability. How do you sustain if there's not a long-term like plan or resource? So you'll see that a lot of black businesses are struggling because they got all this money and all this attention, after the murders of George Floyd, of Ahmaud Arbery, and Breonna Taylor. But you look at that, and we did a case study on this for AB Media Group. You look at that like chart, after June, like in August, it just plummets. So the chart goes like this, and then it just plummets. So where's the support for all of those businesses that you were telling everybody to buy black? You were putting out all these directories. You were donating all this money because it's not sustainable.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of what we talked about, this idea that all these responses to support black businesses or like empower black people, sometimes people sort of do it because it's like becomes a hashtag, right?
Yeah.
Hashtag, right? We actually want like a support in place that's going to benefit the black community in the long term. But what we continue to see, and I think it's going to be up to our generation to really start like calling these things out.
Yeah.
Stop the hashtag movement.
Yeah.
And actually start like the movement that support and empower the minority businesses.
I agree. Yeah, I completely agree. This summer we actually, a lot of my work is in a specific industry, which is the PR and media and like marketing. So we actually put a call out of accountability, because we watched, from my viewpoint of being in PR and comm, we watched agency after agency after agency put up black squares, talk about Black Lives Matter. But if you ask them for their numbers, right, of how many black employees you have, to this day in 2020, there are large-scale agencies and brand and PR companies that do not have a single black employee. And that's unacceptable. Like, we're in 2020. We're about to be in 2021. That's completely unacceptable. And so we called them out. We were like, all right, here are all the agencies that posted a black square. Give us your numbers. And it was a struggle. And people were like, agencies were so terrified. And they were like, well, why do we have to give our numbers? Why do we have to do this? And it's because they knew what we knew, that if we put the numbers out there, you would see that, one, you don't have any black employees. That, two, black employees were the first to go when COVID hit, right? So is it that every single black person at your agency or your firm was unqualified? Why was it that black people were at a disproportionate level of being let go or laid off or being put on furlough versus everyone else on your roster? So it's like this, like, I completely agree. I think it's up to us. I think that we have to like keep applying pressure, and we can't let up, like, because that's the thing. If we can't be appeased by somebody throwing dollars at us, by somebody being like, oh yeah, I'm going to put you on this directory. No, it's what people have done in the past, specifically to marginalized groups, to appease them so that they don't keep pushing back like, oh, we're good, we got this feature, we did. Like, no, like, it doesn't work, you know. And I mean, I could go on a rant, because then there's also the idea that, like, all right, well, capitalism is a byproduct of like white supremacy, but like, you know, so there's so many places that could go. But I think specifically, I agree, like, we have to, as black people, I think as people that come from underrepresented communities, we have to keep applying pressure. We have to keep, like, you know, holding businesses and big brands accountable, but also we have to get really intentional about supporting our communities, because that's another thing too. Is just like, if minority groups or underrepresented groups just did not buy anything, right? Like, what would that look like? So even think about the recent stuff that's been happening in freaking, what was it, in Europe, in France, where their president like is on this big like anti-Islam campaign, right? And a lot of Islamic countries decided that they would not buy products that were French-owned companies. So Estée Lauder, like all of those companies, the stocks plummeted. Their economy looked crazy for a day or two. So like, you gotta think about like the buying power that we have, and if we're intentional about that, and really like as a community are like, yo, we're not giving these businesses our money, you know, and what that would look like. Because I mean, people who are in positions of power, technically, usually like financial power, that's their biggest threat. Yeah. That you stop giving them your money, because then that means that they're in trouble.
Money,
you know,
money
talks. Money
So,
talks.
and knowledge as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's 501. I just want to make sure that I know time check. But go ahead.
You know, good time check. On this same vein of the you know, pandemic.
Yeah.
How has business been affected for you?
Yeah. So you know what, I count my lucky stars every single day. When the pandemic happened, I didn't really see a shift, and I think that's because, one, I'm quick to pivot. Like, I'm a big strategy person. So for me, a lot of the work that we were working with clients, it wasn't work that would stop, right? So we're thinking big picture stuff. So we had, for example, a client, we were working on a cohort for the summer. So like helping to bring black men in education to a space, do like a summer program, introduce them to like key players in like the sector. And what we did was we just went digital, right? So like I was able to pivot for clients, and also just like, I think I had just sustained so many like great relationships, and the agency itself has sustained great relationships, that it didn't do much really to affect us, which again, I'm grateful for, because that was not the case for so many people. But what I think it also did at some point is that we actually got busier, because you remember there was a surge of people like, well, crap, if the government's not giving me money and I can't work, how am I have to figure it out. So we had a lot of people start coming to us talking about like, you know, starting new businesses, about like wanting to strategize. So we saw an influx. Like we're still busy. Like every time someone asks me that question, I'm like, yeah, I mean, not much. Just like, if anything, we got busier, which again is a blessing, because I know that that's not the same like case for a lot of other businesses. But I think specifically what it also allowed us to do, which I'm really grateful for, is to keep helping, right? And keep figuring out ways that we can support small business owners, that we can continue to support brands that are really looking to navigate their way through this time, because, you know, it's 2021 and we're still in the middle of a pandemic. So, yeah. So
are you up for a couple more questions?
Yes!
I know Instagram usually kicks us off after an hour, but I think they extended the whole time.
Yeah, no, I'm good.
Okay, so we keep coming in.
I'm here for it. I like that it's such a free flowing combo.
So going on a more, more granular level around just like the different things you do.
Yeah.
What are there any techniques or methods day in and day out that you use to stay productive, or that you use to, stay focused on different?
Yeah.
Make sure that you're getting different, probably touching.
I'm a routine-based person. Like, I am somebody who thrives on routine, and I've noticed it even more in the pandemic, is that, like, I gotta do the things that I have to do in the order that I say that I'm gonna do them, when I say I'm gonna do them, and how I'm gonna do them. Because when I get off of my routine is when I start to be like, well, I'll do this. No, like, I'm a routine-driven person, so I tend to, like, set routines for myself. I like to plan out my week in advance. And I think what's been most helpful for me is I don't actually like email anybody back. I don't do any like business stuff on Mondays because I tend to work 7 days a week most of the time. So Mondays are that day that like I'm not emailing anyone back. Don't text me because you won't get a text message from me. If you see me on Instagram, I'm still not free. And that's because it's really my day to catch up, right? If there's something that I'm behind on, possibly that's the day that I can really like get like caught up. But what it also does is it allows me to like, I think, take control and ownership of my schedule. It allows me to sit with my calendar. So resources that I use to keep myself organized. I'm very big on Google Calendar. If it's not in my Google Calendar, it does not exist. So it has to go in my Google Calendar. I also am a very big list person. I like lists, and then I like to prioritize my list. So like when I'm mind mapping for the week, I've got high priority tasks, I have medium priority and low priority, and each of those has like a time frame that is associated with them. So if something is high priority, that means in the next 24 hours, 24 to 48 max, it needs to be done. If something is low priority, I have about 72 hours to do it. Medium priority, it's like about 72 hours. If it's low priority, just as long as it gets done this week, it's fine. And that helps me kind of really prioritize tasks because I have a lot of different hats that I wear. Sometimes I'm project managing, sometimes I'm designing, sometimes I'm like, creating workflows, sometimes I'm like in a document, I'm like doing verbiage. So it's like there's a lot of different things that require my time. And what I've also what I found has helped is to also organize my week in a way that makes sense for the work that I have to do, right? So if I know that I have a shit ton of like creative work to do, I am going to not touch any admin stuff. I'm going to like take a day to get all the creative stuff done so that I'm in my zone of genius, and it's not like, oh crap, I gotta go from like designing something to then sitting down and trying to focus on like getting these emails out or putting a pitch together or putting like copy together, because it's hard. You
mentioned this phrase, zone of genius.
Yeah.
Can you touch more?
Yeah. So your zone of genius, which I'm sure people know, is just like how it's what you do really well and what you are, what you have mastery in. For me, when I tap into my zone of genius, because I have several different zone of genius, and it's really important for me to stay in that. So for example, if like Monday, like I said, I know that I'm not doing anything, I use that like kind of like free-flowing like just vibe to take me into Tuesday, where I can work on creative stuff, because we use different sides of our brains when we're like focusing on things that are like more artistic and visual versus things that are like logical, administrative. So I think being in a relaxed state from the Monday helps me to better ease into creative work, and I recognize that about myself. So I'm like, all right, Tuesday we're just going to do stuff that has to do with design. If I have to work on a website, if I have to finish up a branding project, or I'm working on a branding project, I'm going to do that on Tuesday. Wednesday, pivot to like admin, because I am taking calls, and I'm taking calls and I'm in document, try to do documents Wednesday. So then when I'm available on Thursday, I'm like, all right, now's the time that I kind of have to like start to get back into that creative flow for Fridays, because it's also like it's a more relaxed day. So I start to prep myself by finishing up admin work, but then also like getting into like the visual framework again for Friday. So yeah, so like I'm just like again, I'm like a routine based person. Like I have to follow those things. I have to like pay attention. Yeah, because it's so easy to like to get distracted and it's like imagine like wanting to create something and then like you're thinking about like a spreadsheet that you have to work on, or you're thinking about like a freaking like a document that you have to put together. It's like it's some things are just more. I think for me, design feels a little bit more natural. And so I really like to like give myself that time versus like, all right, now I'm in I'm in list mode. I'm typing. We're in shared Google Docs. I'm sending out emails. So it's really important for me to be able to identify like those zones of genius. And also like one thing I'm being more cognizant about is just paying attention to how I feel when I'm working so that I know when to do certain types of work, right? Like, all right, in the morning, it's really easy for me to bust out copy. I could sit there and be in a Google Doc for like 20 minutes and like have a shit ton done. Versus in the like middle of the day, in the afternoon, it's kind of harder for me to like, my mind isn't really there. I want to do stuff that's a little bit more relaxed. Like I want to sit here and design something. I don't necessarily want to be in admin work. I don't want to be on a phone call. So I pay attention to all those things a lot more now. And hopefully they will inform like my 2021 routines, how I choose to do things.
It's great. Thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
It just comes down to this whole idea of like, know yourself.
Yeah.
Like, and you also are your own best asset. So it's really powerful that you share this, because the key thing is know yourself, and I also love the idea like you letting your sort of emotion drives your actions, and also like your goals. So these are like things that you will see somebody who's successful, got $1 million, $1 billion, but you notice that they do these small things every day, and it becomes a habit. And this is really what makes them successful.
There's
it's not a
system.
There's this book. Oh my bad, I'm about to lean back and there's this book called Atomic. I'm like, what am I about to do? It's called Atomic Habits. That book has really like influenced me to be really critical, to think about how I do things and how I set goals and how I achieve them. Because there's a science to it, and it's been like James Clear has like written it out. He's just like, think about like when you have a goal and why it's harder to attain a goal when you don't have a plan for it, right? So just paying attention to stuff like that too. So now we are all comprised of habits and routines. I like structure. I thrive in structure. So yeah.
What other books or resources, podcasts, or anything that you found helpful to you?
Yeah, so I love How I Built This. It's one of my favorite podcasts that I listen to. In terms of like resources, I like to read a lot of like professional development books, and sometimes it's not always like a physical book. Sometimes it's like an audio book, or sometimes it's like even like one-off like PDFs or things like that. Those I enjoy. Trying to think what other resources. Listen, I enjoy watching a lot of TED Talks. I love the format of it. I think that they're always like, there's just so much to learn from those type of conversations. What else do I like to?
You can give us listen. You don't have to.
Right? I'm like, what do I listen to?
What you already have is good.
I'm like, yeah.
So we want to be mindful of your time. You share so much with us today that we need to soak it up and digest it later. But you do so many things, which is incredible.
Thank you.
So I want to touch on this thing about like we really want to push this idea of self-care. And mental health, especially during crazy time like this. So what do you do to take care of yourself?
You know, it's funny. I'm probably the worst person to ask this question to, because I'm dead ass. Like I'm probably like one of the worst people when it comes to self-care. And I mean that's rooted in so many things, right? So that's like the idea of like over-functioning. I think I've lived a lot of my life being somebody who overperforms and overfunctions, and that's just rooted in like shit, well, my mom did it by herself. My sisters did it. Like, I gotta, like, be there. So I'm unlearning that. So what I will say is that I think that it's really important to start to, like, to understand yourself, similar to what you were saying, and understand, like, what I think your self-care gaps are. So even me implementing Mondays, that's my attempt at, like, self-care for myself. If I know that I'm not somebody that takes weekends, then let me take this day to myself. What I will say now too is that I am so much better at boundaries. I used to suck at boundaries, and that's extremely dangerous when you are an entrepreneur, and I think when you are in multiple different things at the same time, because if you can't push back, or if you don't even know what your boundaries are, how can you enforce them to other people? How can you tell clients, these are my hard no's, right? Like, this is the line that you can't cross, or I can't commit to this if you don't know what that is for yourself. So I definitely would say really taking the time to understand and, like, to get to know yourself on that level. Self-care for me looks like, I know this is really probably, like, weird. It really looks like I, like, still love watching music videos. So, like, self-care for me looks like, you know, like, music videos are awesome. And you think about, like, all the old school music videos and, like, how much thought went into them. So I enjoy, like, things like that. I enjoy, like, watching and binging Netflix shows. I enjoy, like, walks in the park. I love museums. So things like that are, like, self-care things for me that help me feel aligned. I'm a big candle person. I'm, like, really big into aromatherapy and, like, setting, like, specific moods. So I know that if I'm feeling like
Speaking of cats, so
no, I surround.
I think we actually did our homework. So if you look over there,
I peeped though. I peeped, and I was like, oh, let me, like, things like that, like, help to relax you. So there's always a candle burning, like, whenever I'm, like, working. So things like that, like.
I don't mean to cut you off, Bonnie.
I do love some. Yes.
I gotta say, Saku got me into candles. So Saku and I are roommates.
Oh my God,
And
yes.
he
Okay.
Buying, like, I noticed he just started buying more and more candles.
Yes.
So I bought a candle the other day. And, like, I have it in my room. And I'm like, yo, this, I don't know.
It will make, but candles will make you feel so, like, depending on what type of candle you're burning, it just, like, and that's what it is, aromatherapy. It entices, like, certain feelings. So, like, yeah, so it's important. So.
By the way, you have a comment from Jasmine Cherise. We had her on our show, and she was amazing. She just made a comment saying, yes, how I built this is awesome.
Yes, no, it's one of my favorites.
Jasmine, thank you so much for your comment. If you have additional comment, please just put them on the chat.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah, I will say, yeah, I'm still learning the self-care thing. I'm still learning how to, like.
It's a process.
It definitely is. Because there's life to be lived. So, yeah.
So it's coming down this tail end. Question that I've always asked is, if you had to tell your younger self, give your younger self some advice.
Yeah.
How old do you want to?
Let's go 18.
Ooh.
18.
Yes. Okay. If I had to tell my 18-year-old self anything, it would be, and I know it sounds so probably cliche, but, like, just trust your gut and, like, trust that you know what you know and you know what you want. Because I think, 18, most people are like, oh, you're going into college, you're learning yourself. But a lot of, like, who I am now is really going back to the person that I used to be, which is crazy in so many ways. Like, I knew the things that I liked. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what I wanted to put out into the world. Like, even if I didn't know specifically what it would look and feel like, I knew what that feeling was. And I think when I was in college and even just post-grad, there was, like, a period of time where I was kind of like, well, maybe, again, this idea of maybe I should do this. Well, this person says I'm good at this. This person thinks that this might be best for me. Like, let me try it out. But yeah, just trust yourself. A lot of the times, our gut already knows. Our intuition will tell us. I often say, and I have a belief that when you like keep experiencing certain things, it's because you're neglecting what your spirit is telling you. And so you have to learn the same lesson again and again and again and again. So, like, I have found myself in that situation several times So just really being able to like off rip now be like, nah, it's not for me. Like the universe is letting me know it's not for me. This doesn't feel right because it's not for me, and really like leaning into that and trusting that. So trust your gut, and have fun with it. Like, yeah, have fun with it. Whatever you choose to do, have fun with it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Conversation. We definitely took a lot, and I think it's gonna be real helpful for everyone who watches this.
Yay!
And who's been on here.
Yes, and your boyfriend, right?
He's not even paying attention.
Thank you for being here, for supporting her. She's incredible.
He has no choice.
But I just know she value you, and for you to be here, we also appreciate you, brother, for being here.
So we'll be back. We host Pepper Soup Talk bi-weekly on Saturdays.
Yeah.
So thank you, Fatou, for coming on our show.
Thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Media, cultural strategies. One other question I wanted to ask: what is a cultural strategy?
It means many different things for many different people. But for me, as a cultural strategist, what I interpret it to be is that I'm someone that's always centering culture and is always trying to stay true to the culture, right? Whatever that culture means. So we hear this phrase of like for the culture, right? Do it for the culture, but what does it mean to do it for the culture? So for me specifically, it is really being able to honor and just value the things that have gotten me here, to value the work that's being done by different cultural groups, and to always center that and value that. I think that oftentimes, and this might be a little bit rant, but I think a lot of times like people feel as though they can't show up fully, or they have to like dim certain things of like their background or where they came from to fit into spaces or to be successful. And so my work in cultural strategy is just to ensure that we're always honoring that, and that we're always making sure that culture is valued and put at the forefront of anything that we do, whether it's a campaign. Like we're never going to do something that's whitewashed ever. We're never going to do something that, it's just never going to be what I do or what I choose to do. So.
That was a good question. Question you shall ask. You saved the best for the last.
He saved the best for last.
Thank you. We have a comment from California Forest. Say adulting into your inner child.
Yeah, unlearning.
Hey man, thank you for that comment.
I love that. Yes.
That's a good slogan. We could make a shirt.
I like that. Yes.
That's Amy. That's a pen friend.
Yeah.
Shout out to Amy Lopez on the chat.
Shout out to everyone who's tuned in. We got some people who just stayed with us for over an hour, so we appreciate you.
Thank you for your time, for holding space
We want to hear from you. So shoot us a DM, shoot us an email. Thank you for being here.
Woo woo.